The liberal media, known for following with fantastic ideologies such as pro-life versus pro-choice, known for trying to be fair to everyone as much as they possibly can. Wrong!
Eh.
Okay. Now the following image above all this audio is Simone Sanders, a known CNN panelist. Now this was her response to the black hashtag BLM kidnapping, which was refuted to not be part of Black Lives Matter, which actually it turned out that it was some of the more violent supporters who had orchestrated and committed this act of violence. Now, before someone says that's bullshit, you're a racist for not supporting a group of people, it's not all of them I have a problem with. It's only the ones who go to the lengths that the people who beat that 18-year-old autistic man went to. You have the right to assemble, you have the right to protest. But when you start rioting, flipping over cars, and in this case, kidnapping someone, cutting their head with a knife, making them drink toilet water, and beating the shit out of them while screaming fuck Donald Trump and fuck white people, it does ends up transitioning into a fucking hate crime. It's a hate crime regardless. Because we all know that if it was 3 white people doing it to 1 black teenager, the whole country would fucking explode.
But since it's 3 black people doing it to 1 white person, the whole world isn't even gonna fucking say anything.
To be fair, a lot of people that support Black Lives Matter, not all, some, a lot have come out to condemn these people for their actions, which they should. But there are just as many people that kept saying, well, since my great-great-great-great-granddaddy was a slave, despite the fact that him and that slave owner are long fucking dead, and despite the fact that slavery's been over for over 200 years, keep in mind I said over, not exactly, it means that it's okay to commit a hate crime against someone who had nothing to fucking do with it. Simone Sanders, more or less, when she was asked about the issue, she tried to downplay it. She didn't want to call it a hate crime, despite the fact that the person was attacked based on their status of being a disabled person, which is one of the things that constitutes a hate crime, as well as his ethnicity, which also is one of the things that constitutes a hate crime.
A and B, there you go.
And even if it was one thing or the other thing, it would still be considered a hate crime because it would still meet one of those 2 criteria. More or less, Simone Sanders prefers that it not be called a hate crime just for the sole purpose of it not being called a hate crime. There's no reason to not call it exactly what it is, other than the fact that she simply refuses to acknowledge the fact that anyone can be racist at any time. Now, I was called a racist because I made a racially insensitive video. Despite the fact that I did not use racial slurs or rely on stereotypes, it was still deemed racist, even though I had avoided saying racist things. But when someone like Simone Sanders says openly on national television that if a white person is beat up because they're white, it's not a hate crime, the whole world fucking sings and dances and it's la-di-da okay. Fuck that bullshit. We need to stop making this a nation of double standards. If a hate crime is committed, the people responsible should be held accountable. Race should not play a factor in whether or not a person is let to go or facing a reduced sentence. How much of an evil person do you have to be to kidnap another human being for their disability and for their race, just to kick the shit out of them and then broadcast it like it's a fucking national holiday? I don't give a fuck what anyone says, if they call me a racist or not, after this. I'm not going to say anything racist, but I am going to say that these people should be condemned. The judge took pity on these assholes for doing this shit. The judge was actually lenient on this bullshit. Why? Why would these assholes deserve leniency? Because we all know that if the shoe was on the other foot, these guys would be getting the shit kicked out of them in public at every given opportunity. Look, Simone Sanders, whether she wants to admit it or not, she is a racist. Because she's trying to say that a hate crime, if it's against a white person, should not be categorized as a hate crime. She might not have said it in those exact words, but the way she worded it and the way she handled it is pretty much tap dancing on the issue. In conclusion, fuck CNN, fuck Simone Sanders.
I just don't understand the news these days. I know he's right about fucking Sanders and how she worded the situation be called not hate crime. How is that not a fucking hate crime? The guy was white and disabled, and they kicked the shit out of him, and they laughed about it like it was a fucking joke.
It's not to mention they did it just because of those two things, instead of for any other reason.
The hell you mean it's not a hate crime? Hello? Hey.
Okay, you got anything more you want to say? Or are you good?
Just one last thing. Fuck Sanders. Fuck CNN. Fuck the news. Sometimes.
Thing is, this is why it's hard to take movements like Black Lives Matter seriously. Those that are part of the movement that are violent cause more damage than those who are passive can repair. And if you want to have an organized movement, you need to set boundaries on what people are and are not allowed to do when protesting. This is not a protest. This is not a cry for liberation. This is not a call to action. This is just a savage beating this poor man took for no reason.
I don't care if I get called a racist for this. I just don't care if I get called a racist.
Well, you're not being racist. You're just saying flat out that it's wrong. Like being a racist would be like shouting racial slurs at the people who did it. Which this guy wasn't even a racist either. They just pretty much picked him up and kidnapped him because he was disabled because they figured he'd be easy to beat the shit out of. Which sadly this poor guy was because he didn't know what the fuck was going on. He was scared. He probably feared for his own life the whole time.
Hell, I would.
And yet they're trying to justify it because 300 something fucking years ago, someone was kidnapped from their nation. And yes, they did face some pretty harsh treatment. I'm not gonna lie, slavery is an ugly fucking thing. But it's been over for such a long time that it doesn't even matter. I mean, think about it. Christians were slaves to Roman Catholics. Protestants were slaves to Catholics. Catholics were slaves to Islamists at one point in time. But there's no point in talking about that shit anymore. It's done. All I have to say is CNN needs to seriously fix its shit because it needs to stop trying to be so politically correct that it ignores things for what they actually are.
Fuck you, and goodbye.
We're out.